Thank you for our meeting. To be honest, I support the meeting and the result that our teams had yesterday. Of course, I can say frankly, I try to always do this. To talk to you frankly. Frankly, I think that this is the first big constructive conversation between our teams. I want to thank the American side and the Ukrainian team, thank them for the fact that it happened, many hours for the meeting. It was really quite detailed. It is very important for us that we hear each other, have the right to say, share important, very important, priority things. And it seems to me that yesterday there was such a first step and there was such a very positive meeting. I think yesterday's meeting and its very positive outcome in terms of resumption of assistance to the United States of America are necessary and very positive, and I emphasize these words again. I think this is important. And also intelligence sharing. I think this is important. For example, I have just had a long technical bet on drones, on the work of Ukraine's air defense, on our capabilities, ranges and timely response to one or another type of missiles, ballistics, etc., of the enemy. And so restoring intelligence in any case for us, for the people, for everyone. A positive, important result. Basically, this is about conversation. We discussed a lot of different details at the meeting. I think you probably have questions about this. I emphasized the humanitarian aspect. Again, it is important that the parties talked about this, about how important it is for us to help people, to take them out of captivity. Regarding the increase in the intensity of exchanges and the volume of exchanges, in terms of the number, we need to raise these issues and implement them. And also the issue, one of the most difficult, regarding the return of children. This issue was also discussed. Many other details were discussed, which I would not like to talk about today, because they were not in the corresponding text. But everything that was in the statement, all these issues were discussed in sufficient detail by the parties. Ukraine has also demonstrated that Ukraine is really fighting for itself, has never wanted a war and wants the war to end. And supports the United States in ensuring that the end of the war is as expedited as possible. And I don't know, you paid some attention to the fact that there was one topic, considered before the meeting, that to the silence in the sky, the silence at the sea, let's call it that. And then the American side proposed a different approach. Our team somewhere inside this meeting had a connection with me. The American side with the American president. And they raised this very issue. Is the Ukrainian side ready to take steps regarding silence throughout the territory? I have emphasized this many times. None of us believe the Russians. We went through it. But we will not play with the narratives that we do not want the end of the war, with the narratives that Russia has and spreads around the world. We will not play. I am very serious, and it is important for me to end the war. I want the President of the United States of America to see this, for the Americans to see and feel it, and for Europe, for everyone, to be in alliance, precisely in alliance with the fact that everything must be done to force Russia to end this war. Therefore, my reaction was, We are ready for the format of silence for 30 days. In the format offered to us by the American side.
RBC Ukraine, Yulia Yakimova, tell me, please, were sanctions for violating the ceasefire discussed at the meeting? If it is violated, what will these sanctions be and who will guarantee them? And the second question, Trump said yesterday that he was waiting for you at the White House. Are you planning your visit there already?
Thanks. First of all topics were discussed. I want to emphasize this again. All important topics, sensitive topics. But, I think, they were discussed point by point and it is too early to talk about it. In general, it seems to me that we talked about this with the American side. The American side wanted the Ukrainian side to demonstrate its readiness for quick steps to end the war. After that, if the Ukrainian side demonstrates, the American side gave us its word that it would resume assistance. And the American side did it. We demonstrated, they did it. That's why I said that a very constructive conversation is the first with such a result. So I think it's a positive. But after that, like some of our European colleagues, who also supported such serious steps to end the war, I was shown support for my European colleague and everyone said that the ball was on the Russian side. And this is a fact today. And so, I think that before sanctions or other steps of pressure on Russia, it will depend on the American side. And it will depend after their dialogue with the Russian side, it seems to me. If I understand correctly, the steps are peace through strength. If I comment on it correctly and understand it correctly, then it will be exactly like this. If the Russians demonstrate that they are ready for America's offer, as ready as we are, no more, no less, as the first step, then, I think, there will be appropriate solutions. And if they are not ready, we very much hope that the American side will then demonstrate exactly what it was talking about. And about the visit to Trump. I haven't heard about the invitation. I think any meeting we have with the President of America must end with a positive result for both parties. And I think that's how we should approach any of our meetings. Today, the reaction of our societies is like this, it is vital. And I would really like us to have a result. I would like us to have a positive result for people. People have been fighting for themselves in Ukraine for a very long time. They have been fighting for a very long time and deserve to have, I don't want to say light at the end of the tunnel, because I'm talking about light. Indeed, they would have light. We do everything for this. I really want any meeting between us and the President, from the United States of America, first of all, to be positive. To do this, everyone needs to prepare, to warn everyone about one or another format of our meetings.
Sky News, Ramzad Safarov. Were security guarantees discussed yesterday at this meeting? If not discussed, then at least after this meeting there are any understandings of the features that could have changed in these security guarantees? And conditionally, if the Russians suddenly agree to a ceasefire, what are the realistic terms in the near future?
To end the war. They began ending the peace 3 years ago.
That is, a 30-day ceasefire. What is the realistic plan when it can be conditional in the near future? If they tell you, it's every other day, in weeks. Thanks.
First of all, as I said, I consider everything that is in the statement to be positive signals, and there is also about the security of Ukraine. This suggests that this topic is being discussed. I received all the details as much as possible by phone from my team. But still, we will talk about security guarantees in more detail. If there is silence for 30 days, then these 30 days are allocated precisely to put everything on paper. We have our proposals, but put on paper agreed steps with our allies, agreed steps and formats of certain security guarantees. That will be in Ukraine after the end of this war. As for the second part,
When is a ceasefire realistic?
today, everything depends on whether Russia wants a ceasefire in silence, or she wants to keep killing people. Today depends on this country 100%. Because America has demonstrated its steps and its position. Ukraine demonstrated, answered without any different interpretations, very directly its position. And today Russia will have to answer this. And after that, I don't know in what format anymore. We discussed what should be said in any format. If this happens, then what kind of monitoring? These are technical groups, how they will meet and when. These are the next steps.
Mr. President, 2 clarifying questions. Continuation of the first question. Do we have information that the American side may have already previously agreed with the Russian side on the idea of 30 days before meeting and negotiating with us? Do we have such information? If not, again, what are the specific ones, not that they said at the negotiations, but what steps can theoretically be sanctioned, applied to the Russian side? Or are these the gentle sanctions Trump mentioned? Is it allocating more assistance to us? Maybe something else? And one more question about Sudzha. Of course, now everyone is watching this, and it seems that the Russians are trying to narrow our field for negotiations with the situation at the front in the shortest possible time. Please, what can I say about this? Thanks.
Thanks. Our troops on the territory of the Kursk region are fulfilling their tasks. The Russians are trying to unequivocally put maximum pressure on our troops. The military command is doing what it is supposed to do, saving the maximum lives of our soldiers. It is clear to us what the Russian side will demonstrate in the coming days. I think the question is not even that they are raising the degree in the Kursk direction. They will do intimidation. I think there will be different ones. And nuclear in nature as well. It must be understood that this is a clear methodology for the actions of the Russian Federation before any format of diplomacy. We need to look at this soberly and respond to real threats, not just informational ones. Of course, people should not be in an information vacuum. And our intelligence, our military, the Ministry of Defense, needs to react as quickly as possible to refute this or that information about threats or non-threats. But we must prepare for strong information pressure. Believe me, we personally have been in different formats in such situations for the appropriate time. We understand what is happening. They must understand that the Russians act as they always do.
Do we know that the Americans may have agreed in advance with the Russians on the story of 30 days? And if not, and the Russians will not agree to this, what is theoretically possible for the Americans to do with them? Thanks.
To be honest, I don't care if they haven't talked about it beforehand. I look at it exclusively, whether it can bring us closer to the end of the war or not. And I believe that today we should have demonstrated readiness. Not only what we have, what we live in, but to demonstrate informationally and realistically, to demonstrate to the whole world. And I believe that we have done it. And this is the most important thing for me.
Thank you, Mr. President. CBS News Holly Willem. Last month, it was suggested that President Trump lives in an information vacuum, such as that created in Russia. Tell me, please, do you think the US president is still under the influence of Russian disinformation about Ukraine?
Thank you very much. First of all, as I started with this, I consider it important to have a correct, detailed one, despite the fact that this is a long-term meeting. But I consider this meeting in Saudi Arabia to be just that. And I believe that the more our parties speak, communicate, show details, discuss details, each of the details, moreover, we will be in the same context. And in my opinion, that is why there is a corresponding result of this meeting. It took us a while, everyone, probably, to be in contact more. But this is not enough. We need more meetings, and if there are such meetings with such positivity, then we can have the desired result.
Mr. President, in fact, you did not answer the question very much. Aren't you afraid that the US president is still under the influence of Russian disinformation about your country?
I explained to you how this happens. We are in Ukraine. Why did I always want our partners from the United States of America to visit us more often? Because there is a lot of different information. We live today in a world where one piece of information, one tweet can change a lot. It may affect, it may not affect, it happens in different ways. Especially for all people who are fighting for themselves. In Ukraine, you know how sometimes it happens, this or that information is perceived. It is perceived as difficult for someone who has lost their family. It is perceived painfully, very painfully, for someone else it is nervous. And therefore, to understand means to communicate. Otherwise, if you are not communicating, this space is occupied by other information. Not the one that is here. That's why I've always wanted our colleagues from the United States to come here. And they saw where we have destruction, where it is difficult for us, and where people live, where they fight, how our children live. On the one hand, it's scary that it's a war and they go to an underground school, and on the other hand, when they go to an underground school, they see other children there. That is, you can't say that this is happiness, you can't say that. This is grief, war, grief. But the fact that they find this light in this grief, when children see each other, I believe that this is really happiness. And it is not easy to fully understand this when there is a lot of different information in the world. There is especially a lot of Russian information. Especially they really work like this, and here, you can't do anything. They invest a lot of money in this information and have influence in many countries of the world. And the only weapon that the Ukrainians have against all this volume of this Russian information, we have only one. This is thanks to journalists so that this information is disseminated in the world. And thanks to the possibility of dialogue. And it is desirable that this dialogue take place in Ukraine. I think so. And that's why it's very difficult. The Russians will do everything as I told you about disinformation. The Russians will do everything to quarrel Ukraine with America. And I believe that Saudi Arabia was necessary. It is possible to see different results in Saudi Arabia. Resumption of aid, someone will see the main result in this. The first steps towards the end of the war, someone will see a positive result in this. I believe that the very meeting of Saudi Arabia shatters Russia's plans for a full escalation of relations between Ukraine and America. On the contrary, there is de-escalation. And this is how it should be between partners.
Greetings, Mr. President. First of all, are there any red lines that Ukraine has established, and which it will never cross during the previous negotiations to end the war? First of all, this concerns the occupied territories of Ukraine. And the second question concerns the latest attacks against Moscow and Russia. Is this an attempt to show a powerful position in the negotiations?
First of all, let me answer that our army and our defense forces use various long-range weapons of domestic production, if we are talking about drones. Look, this is not a show of strength. I'll just explain. This is a fair answer, absolutely, to what Russia is doing to us. Today, for example, strikes were carried out, for example, not only on Kryvyi Rih, but I will give the example of Kryvyi Rih, because there is an exclusively humanitarian aspect here. The hotel was hit today. This, you know, as we talked with the press secretary today, he is also from Kryvyi Rih. And he says that there are no hotels left in Kryvyi Rih. That is, it says something. This is not a coincidence. If we say that all hotels in Kryvyi Rih were destroyed, ballistic strikes, and more than one blow to the same hotel, that is, again, not a coincidence. And do you think that after this strike, Ukrainian troops will respond or not? The answer is obviously clear. This is not a show of strength. But this is a demonstration that we are independent. We are a sovereign state. And for any blow, no matter how healthy the territory you are, or something else, you consider yourself an empire. You will always receive an answer from a country like Ukraine. We didn't start anything, they started the war. We are demonstrating with yesterday's decisions. We want to bring peace closer, we want to end this war, we really want peace. But killing our people and not getting an answer, it will not be like this. This will not happen. As for the red lines, I, as the president and Ukrainians, as citizens of my country, will not violate their constitution. We will defend sovereignty and our independence by defending our people and our land. It is very difficult for us to fight against such an enemy. This is understandable. But today we are fighting for our independence. And therefore, we will not recognize any occupied territories as the Russian Federation. This is a fact. Our people were beaten for it. Our heroes died. How many wounded, how much we went through. Therefore, no one will forget about it. And when I say that no one will forget about it, this is the most important red line. We will not let anyone forget about this crime against Ukraine.
Olena Korenkova, Suspil News. A brief clarification on the long-suffering agreement on rare earth metals. Secretary of State Rubio stated it should be signed one day, without specifying when. Is there a guarantee that this agreement will be in the form that is accepted for Ukraine, signed in Washington? If there is an official invitation for you, will it be a condition that Ukraine will go, agree and sign?
Ukraine is ready to sign a framework agreement as a first step. We have always talked about it. And to be honest, I thought we would sign it sooner. We are ready for this. There is nothing to talk about. There are no backstages, no secrets. Therefore, we are ready. All.
Guardian. Thanks. Sean Walker of The Guardian. You could say that those few days without American intelligence that you had. How much did this greatly affect Ukraine's ability to defend itself against attacks? Were there any specific results of the loss due to the lack of such intelligence?
I can't tell you this honestly. I explain why. I will definitely tell you about it someday. I can't say about it. I held a lot of meetings, a lot of technical bets in our country for a reason. In order to prepare for any things that can meet us along the way. And that's why I can't say that, otherwise different parties will just understand our readiness. You see, right? Therefore, it is very good that assistance has been restored and intelligence exchange has been resumed. I am grateful for that.
Mr. President, tell me. Are you ready to abolish martial law after the armistice? And do you think about presidential elections after the ceasefire?
Thanks. I think that today we all need to focus on the first steps so that there is silence. Are we ready for a ceasefire or for silence? We specifically did it and said yes. The question is whether the Russian side will be ready for this. Secondly, are our partners ready for technical monitoring? This is a very important aspect. I frankly said that I believed that there was silence in the sky and silence at sea. It is clear how to monitor for us. But if it is quieter everywhere, understanding who we are dealing with and understanding, having the experience of past years, then technical assistance is needed here. The partners are sure of this and the parties talked about it. This is very important. After such a step, the proposal that was negotiated yesterday on the table by the American side can be used, a 30-day period to fully prepare a plan to end the war. A step-by-step plan with security guarantees for the Ukrainian side. If all this is done, then after the preparation of this plan, in any case, by the stage of execution, which will lead to the end of the war. After the end of the war, martial law will be lifted, and after martial law is lifted, elections will be held in accordance with Ukrainian law. No one will postpone anything on purpose.
Thank you, dear colleagues. Thank you, Mr. President.
Can I clarify?
Let's.
You just didn't say what are the chances that Russia will wake up, what was agreed in Saudi Arabia? What will happen if it doesn't happen?
What are the odds? Let's take a look. What will happen to Russia?
America spoke, we told them, and if Russia does not agree, what will America respond to? What will they do then?
Strong steps towards the Russian side. Strong steps. As I understand it, we can count on strong steps. I don't know the details, I don't know yet, but we are talking about sanctions actions, respectively, and strengthening Ukraine.
Given that the negotiations lasted 8 hours, what did Ukraine reject from what the United States offered? Did you get told something on the phone? Why so long?
I was told everything.
Come on, wait. What did the Ukrainian side reject then? What, then, did the Ukrainian side reject from what the United States offered, given that these negotiations lasted so long yesterday?
Their agenda was exactly what is in the statement, what you see there. It was the agenda of negotiations. That's it, there's nothing more to add. Sorry, goodbye.